and Ranking Member Moran for holding this hearing today. Thank you, Attorney General Garland, for joining us. We all want to make sure that folks back home have a fair, functioning justice system and safe communities, which is why we have to make sure DOJ is getting the funding that it needs. Effective law enforcement is crucial to protect people from cyber attacks, drug trafficking, gun violence, and so much more. And it's critical in holding big corporations accountable for cutting corners and engaging in unfair practices that hurt our consumers. And DOJ's work is vital to fighting bigotry and discrimination and protecting people's civil rights, including the right to vote. So we cannot shortchange America's rights or their safety. That's why this hearing is so important. Attorney General Garland, I am really encouraged by the investments your department has made in Eastern Washington, like marshaling new resources and investing in personnel to help combat the crisis of missing or murdered Indigenous people, especially women and girls. DOJ recently launched an MMIP regional outreach program, which allowed our U.S. attorneys for Eastern Washington to add an assistant U.S. attorney to their office who is dedicated to prosecuting those types of cases in the Northwest. How would the resources that your department is now requesting for FY25 build on those efforts?
Yes, this problem of missing or murdered Indigenous persons is really brought home to me. I visited the Alaska Native villages with Senator Murkowski, and I recently visited the Crow Reservation in Montana. But this is a problem all across Indian country, and we take it very seriously. And in our budget request, we've asked for $713.2 million for this program for public safety in Indian country, to include money that we need for FBI, for U.S. attorneys, and for money for the local law enforcement.
Thank you. I appreciate that request. We look forward to working with you on that. The Crime Victims Fund through VOCA accounts for nearly 70% of all funding for services that help victims and survivors of crime. In Washington State and in tribal and rural communities, those programs rely solely on VOCA funding. But we know that deposits into the funds have declined recently and have not kept pace with the need, which has led to cut to service providers in Washington State, meaning less help for victims and survivors, especially in our underserved communities in rural areas and on tribal lands. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of those programs and the Crime Victims Fund as part of the department's effort to promote public safety and support victims of crime?
Absolutely. This is an issue that is particularly dear to my heart, since in the aftermath of Oklahoma City, I spent a lot of time trying to improve the way in which the Justice Department, both itself, deals with victims of horrendous crime, but also helping state and local law enforcement and communities deal with these problems. So our money for OVW grants this year, we're asking for $800 million for the Office of Violence Against Women. The total amount we're asking from the Crime Victims Fund is $1.5 billion total, which is an increase of $147 million over enacted FY24. The victims' money goes to a significant number of different places. Goes to the grants to combat violence against women, the so-called STOP grants, the sexual assault services grants, legal assistance programs for victims, transitional housing, the access to sexual assault nurse exams, culturally specific services. I can talk more about the fund if you want, but
I think that it's just important for all of us to understand the really critical importance of those funds as we work to put our budget together, so thank you. I wanted to ask you about the Federal Bureau of Prisons facility at SeaTac. We had recent reporting from the Seattle Times that found that detainees were routinely unable to access basic medical care and treatment for acute and painful conditions. And according to their reporting, 8 of 19 healthcare positions at the SeaTac facility are now vacant. That no doubt contributes to those issues. What is the department doing to improve access to care for individuals in their custody, and what steps is the department taking to recruit additional healthcare staff?
So The Director Peters, has stated from the very beginning that BOP considers itself a healthcare organization, given how many people need healthcare who are imprisoned. The SeaTac Federal Detention Center has strengthened its recruiting efforts and has contracted for several more medical professionals recently. In the last 6 months, it has tripled the size of its opioid treatment program and provided more routine and chronic care. I think that the director has gotten the message with respect to the deficiencies there.
Okay, and I'm going to be following that very closely, so I expect to be updated on that as we go. And finally, let me just ask you about help for at-risk youth. I continue to hear from communities all over my state about the need to do more to help at-risk youth avoid delinquency and provide better opportunities for them. It is really important that the department's juvenile justice programs serve the youth that end up in this system and allow those kids to realize their full potential. This is an effort that we all know requires coordination across nonprofits and state and local leaders in the federal government. So can you tell me how your budget request would support justice-involved youth?
Yes, so specifically on that question, we're seeking $407 million for juvenile justice initiatives, which is an 8.5% increase. This includes $3 million for a new collaborative reform for juvenile justice initiative for localities that are facing particularly serious juvenile issues.
General Garland, excuse me for interrupting. Can you just pull the mic a little closer so that people can hear better?
Is that
Thank
better?
you.
I'm sorry. The total budget we're requesting is $690.8 million to protect children in a variety of programs: Office of Justice Programs grants, the Office of Justice Programs Stop School Violence grants, and the other matters that I've already mentioned.
Okay, this is a critical program, and we continue to be looking at that, so thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chair Murray, for joining